Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. We're live for another masterclass session. Today we are going to be discussing fantasy architecture. Now, what I mean by fantasy architecture is architecture that just goes beyond your standard architecture. For example, let's say that you wanted to create a brewery or a tavern, but instead of having just a normal Tudor style building being the tavern, instead you'd have like a giant barrel be the main structure, right? Hey Andrew Wargames, glad that you are here. Or it would be perhaps a potion shop inside of a large potion bottle. Hey, Alice and Nimue, both welcome. Some of my favorite people. Hey, and a first time chatter. Hey, Ravens Bonnie, welcome. Glad that you're here, first time chatter. Santum, awesome. So many great people. So, again, we are covering fantasy architecture. And like I was saying before, it's just going to be on the fantastical side. You might replace a regular Tudor style building or a regular some kind of medieval style building and then add something to it that gives it a fantastical element. Great example would be something like a hobbit house. It would be underneath a hill, or like I said, a potion shop inside of a giant potion bottle. All of those things are, I would consider, into the fantasy element. It doesn't mean that you have to add them to your campaign or anything, but I think that understanding some fantasy architecture can push your buildings a little bit further in your campaigns and for your encounters. Hey, first time chatter, Salt Mill, Bitter Dan, and Khalith. Glad that you're all here. Awesome. So as you can see here, I have an example of what I mean by fantasy architecture. I constructed a little model or model, this tiny little model out of fantasy regional stamps to kind of create this. I would consider it maybe a tavern or a brewery of some kind. The fantastical element is obviously a large barrel that's kind of acting as the roof. And so just kind of that fantastical element, while being able to transform that little model that we made into an actual usable encounter map, right? Where we implemented the giant barrel and then we just put a shape right on top of it. Because if you look carefully at the model here at the bottom, there is a rectangular shaped structure that's beneath the barrel that acts as the main building or the main area in which players will be interacting in, and they can also interact outside. So this kind of thing to make is kind of fantasy. It's kind of RPG a little bit. I've seen a lot of this kind of architecture in like video games and things like that. I've seen people also, do art as well for like a D&D campaign or a sorcery type of campaign where you have these more fantastical type of buildings. And so that's going to be the purpose of this video, is to cover architecture like that. Because in the last masterclass, we kind of covered basic, or more, not basic, but advanced architecture, but we didn't really go into the fantastical elements of it. So that will be the purpose of this video. Well, first I'll recreate what we made here because you've already seen it. And so I'll show you how to recreate that. Whenever I'm going into like a fantasy type of structure, one where there's a lot of fantastical elements, I find that kind of piecing together a model of some kind, whether it's a top-down model that you want to emulate into a larger one, or if you want to make a more isometric style one, just using stamps and piecing them together, I find that making a model first helps to kind of decide how many floors it's going to be, where is the stairs going to be placed, where's the front door, because when you put the model together, it's going to have the windows, it's going to have the door, it's going to have these elements already built in, so it'll be easier for you to start identifying where all those things are going to be by using that model. So let's make one first. I'll go right into Fantasy Regional to make my model. And I can just use a simple house. I think like this human house right here, this one or any of these right here will work kind of fine. I'm not sure which one we want. I think this one right here could work good, and this longer one works just fine as well. You can just go ahead and place that there. And then when you're making the mini model, just kind of a heads up, me personally, when I'm making a model like this, I generally tend to have my background just be a black color. There's a reason why. This is just a personal peeve of mine. It's because these actually have a built-in shadow and they stack on top of each other. And just for me, that distracts me. So to make the background black allows me to not have to see those shadows, and it's just easier for me to work with it. That might not be the same for you. So I'll go ahead and place, this is going to be like the base of the structure. Or actually, let's go ahead and create, let's start from the ground up. That's the main structure. What I should do is build the foundation. Something that's often in a lot of fantasy architecture, even in medieval architecture, is that there wasn't the invention of like these power tools and power machinery to dig deep into the ground and create these large concrete foundations for structures. So instead, a lot of the ancients and a lot of those people were interested in kind of creating the foundation outside or above ground. So they would build this flat kind of either stone or whatever type of foundation to support whatever structure they were doing it. You're going to see a lot of that in fantasy architecture, which I like to do is add some kind of foundation that's not below the ground where you can't see it, but above it. So what we can do is we can use, there's some nice dock ones here that's from the pirate, and we'll use this shorter one right here. I think this looks good. And we'll grab kind of a large one. Let's go ahead and put this down real quick. Let's go with this one right here. This will look good. I'll bring it down a layer. About this size looks good. What about there? I'll go ahead and bring the brightness down. I have this general rule about having things be darker the further down they are and be lighter the higher up they are. It's just kind of a hierarchy of contrast that I use when trying to make things look like they're above and below. There is not yet an ability, by the way, the Salt Mill, to pull these from another map. But when 2.0 gets released, which fingers crossed we're hoping for, but this is not an official date, but hopefully next month, we don't know for sure. We're just working tirelessly to get all the bugs out and to make sure that it's ready for release. So when 2.0 comes out, yes, you'll be able to just copy and paste this, sit with a Control-C, Control-V across maps, or you'll be able to save it as a composition that you can just put in the catalog and then use across maps. So both options will be available to you. And I'll be creating a whole separate account dedicated to compositions. So I'm excited about all of that. Let's go ahead and keep going here. So I've kind of created the foundation that it's kind of built upon. Why don't we just make it a little bit smaller here, and then I'll build another piece that's going to go out like this, and then this is going to extend like this, and then we'll create some stairs that lead up to that spot right there. And we'll also create some other elements as well. For instance, we want to use a barrel. Let's use this one. We're going to make it nice and big. Don't worry about the stamp being scaled up too big or the line work or being blurry because it's been overextended. That's okay. We're just using this as a model to help us out. You'll see how kind of blurry and how the line work looks really odd. That's okay. The focus is going to be on just using it as a model instead of making it look good. Yeah, that's a huge barrel. But you know, this barrel obviously is kind of a fake wooden one. It obviously doesn't hold anything inside of it. It's just a fantastical element to the structure to kind of give away what the structure is, right? In your normal D&D campaign, right, you can't really tell whether which structure might be an inn or a tavern without some kind of external props on the outside of the building or a sign or something, right? But using this kind of fantasy element makes it very clear that this is going to be something like a brewery, or maybe it's a winery, it's got a giant wine cask on top of it, or maybe it's you know, a tavern. So when you add in those kind of fantasy elements, it makes it more clear to identify what that structure is. So I find that very helpful. Let's just keep going. I'm going to add a couple more elements to give it a little bit more interesting feel to it. Like there are these taller ones here. We might want to consider maybe placing one right here like this. We can bring the brightness down a little bit. Hey, Haunted Hayden, glad that you're here. I'll go ahead and add this here. And then why don't we add another barrel on top of that, like this. There we go. Now we have a big barrel there on top of this, a big barrel here. Let's also add in some stairs. We want to create access. Here we go. Oh, I typed in access. I meant to say stair. Here we go. These wooden ones should probably work just fine. Let's go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this door right here as a guide for scale to see how big the stairs need to be. So I think what we'll do is we'll add in a couple. Let's add in 2 side by side, bring the brightness down. Might be a little too dark. We can bring it up a little bit more. There we go. And now we have this way of kind of getting up to it and then going inside of here. I think that looks good. There's a couple more things we might want to consider doing, like maybe let's take a couple barrels and stack them on their side like it's a wine cask or some kind of brew. It might be beer, it might be whatever. And we'll just kind of stack these on top of each other. There we go. And I'll place them just right here like this. There we go. Right, just right there like that. That looks good. Okay. They got some barrels there. We got a barrel there. Okay. And why don't we also maybe connect this larger barrel? Like maybe this smaller barrel right here connects into a tap that goes through the roof of that large barrel and then goes down into the distillery or whatever it might be, right? So some things we can do is we could use a pole as a pipe, or we could use actual pipe. I kind of feel since it's such a mini model, such a small miniature model, we don't need to use the thicker pipe. So we'll just kind of use instead this pole, which I'll desaturate to make it look like metal. And then what I'll do is I'll use the pen. And then you want to make sure that when you do use the pen, we'll start here, and then we're going to go like this across, and then we're going to connect it into this barrel right here. Let's make sure that it's on the right layer. There we go. That's going to connect into there. Let's bring the brightness up a little bit. I think that looks good. Let's put a little pipe that goes into there. Let's also create another one that goes out of this one, kind of like this. We'll put another pipe there. Let's go ahead and use this side. There we go, like that. And then we'll create another one right here coming off of this as well. There we go, just kind of making its way up. There we go. Okay, there we go. Doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry about that. Remember, it's just a mini model. Don't work too hard. You want to put enough on the model that you have something to work with, but you don't have to worry about all the nitty-gritty details. That's something you're going to do when you make the battle map portion of it, right? The mini model is small. It doesn't need details. It's just to give you a rough idea on what you're working with, right? So, and then on top of that, I can just go ahead and add some final things right here. These are like mugs from the old tavern pack right here. And we're just going to go and do what's called some foreshortening. I'll make it nice and big, and then when I go like this, I can create some form of foreshortening by doing that, by just controlling the height. If I go to transform, I can change the height like this, and then I can create these little tiny openings right on the top like that. And now what we have is some pipes coming out. But I'm going to create one more. I think what we should do is create a fake tap that's coming out from here and then kind of moving its way down like this. That might be a kind of an interesting touch to it. We'll increase the scale size just a little bit. Okay, let's put it right about there. I think looks good. Let's try that. Yeah, that looks okay. There we go. So I think overall, this is kind of the model that we have. We have some kind of model that we can kind of work with here. I think that looks good. We could even put stuff, we could put like a little sign maybe that's on the that's on there as well. That could be interesting. Why don't we do that? Let's go fill. Let's use Fantasy Battlemaps. We'll use wood for this. Just type in wood. And why don't we use one that's kind of a normal. And I'll go like this. Let's make sure we change the scale on the stroke. I'll change the stroke as well. But I'll go across like this and then kind of create this sign. It's going to be right there. We'll have to change some things. For instance, we should change the texture scale a little bit. And then why don't we remove the... Well, actually, I think I kind of like that metal part right there. That's good. Why don't we rotate it just a little bit like this? There we go. And that can act as kind of like the sign for like the brewery, or it could say a bar or a tavern or whatever it might be. Okay, there we go. Let's go ahead and create the group. We're just going to label it model, or let's call it brewery, or actually tavern. Let's call it tavern model. Here we go. Yeah, the bigger it gets, a little blurry and gets a little weird, but you start to scale it down and it works out a little better there. So I'll put that model in the corner there. This is going to help me now to kind of put together the rest, to put together the encounter map. So here's how I generally would start things out. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so I can see it. Here we go. That looks good. As always, we're just going to do some basic stuff here. This is the stuff that I teach in a lot of streams, but we're going to start by building from the ground up. So you would start with building the foundation, just like we did with the model, even though I goofed and added that little building there first. But you start with the ground up. So what we'll do is we'll use the shape tool to create that wooden dock foundation that we have there. And what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and turn the grid on so that way I can snap it to grid and kind of use that to my advantage. And I'll start with the main body first. That's going to be this giant square piece right here. And then we'll extend that and create this little piece that juts out in front of the entrance as well. So we'll start with that first. We can change things up. Like for instance, maybe we want to use a wood wall for this. There we go. I'll go ahead and turn snap to grid on so I can see it. Now this first one seems to be almost a perfect square, so we can kind of use that to our advantage. So let's go to square here. We'll snap to grid and then make sure. And I'm not going to make a giant version of this either. I'm just making a small version because of our time. We have to do like 3 or 4 of these. Just kind of a heads up there. Let's go about this size. That should be big enough. Let's go ahead and change the stamp scale a little bit. So it's a little bit bigger. Let's also turn off the shadow because it looks like it's walls. And then I'll also bump up the saturation and then bring the brightness down a little bit. There we go. To make that look less like a wall with a floor and make it look more like it's just the edges of a dock. So let's also change the fill scale just a little bit so it's a little bit bigger. There we go. That looks good. And you notice that I'm making them around the same size. Those planks that you see there, they're around the same size as the wooden stroke that's around it or very close to it. That's how I'm kind of gauging that. And then I'll go ahead and create another one. I want to make sure merge shape is on. And then I can go in like this and then create that next shape like this. So here's that L shape that you see here at the bottom. See that L shape? But I'm not sure it's an L shape, but it's kind of a Tetris. It's a Tetris shape of some kind, right? So there's your foundation. It's kind of coming together, that part. And then from there, we also want to add in some kind of stairs. We can use any kind of stair. We can use this rustic wooden stairs. This one right here works fine. This one works fine as well. And we'll go look at the model here. And the way that the model's set up is it doesn't span the entire thing, but it is kind of central. So we'll kind of we'll turn snap to grid off, and I'm just going to place 2 of these side by side, like here, like this. We'll make sure it's kind of lined up. We're going to bump up the saturation so it's around the same kind of color, and I'll bring the brightness down. There we go. And then we have some stairs that go down. So let's just take a look at it. You see that I have my stairs. That makes sense. Okay. So the next kind of step from here is I might want to add some kind of pillars or posts on the corners. You'll notice something that I do a lot in all of my architecture is when you look carefully at the corners here, even when the curve portion, the curve checkbox is off to get rid of the curve, there's still a little bit of curve and overlap of the 2 walls here. The way that I resolve this is really simple. I add like a wooden cap. And this stamp right here is pretty easy to find. You just go into the catalog and just type in wood wall. And you'll find this segment right here, this core wooden wall segment. You can use this one as well. And then what I'll do from here is I'll go ahead and place it right on the corner. Now, if this is like a super tall post, like a giant tall post that goes higher up than the actual floor itself, then you could add a nice object shadow to it. And that object shadow is going to give the illusion that it's taller because it has a larger and stronger shadow. So if I go over to here, like this, and I select this, move this over here, we'll go to shadow. Let's bring the intensity up. There you go. And if I have that kind of dark shadow right there, it'll look like it's really high up. If you don't want that, then just bring the intensity down a little bit, and then we'll bring the brightness down a little bit. And it will look like it's more just a kind of a cap for that corner. So I'll copy and paste each one of these into each corner here to kind of hide that goofy looking overlap that's there. This is something I do with all my structures. Also, just this is kind of how a lot of like daub and stucco or kind of buildings kind of work. There's like a series of timbers that they use, and then they fill in those timber sections with like daub and stuff like that. So this is kind of a common thing to add these kind of little structure, these little pieces right here, the timber part. Common, at least I think in like a lot of Tudor and older medieval stuff. Okay, that looks good. Okay, I think now that that's put together, we can go ahead and just select the whole thing, and we're going to call it the foundation. Okay, that part's done. Now I am going to use a different stamp. I use a 2.0 stamp, but it's okay because I can also show you how to make your own large barrel that isn't super blurry. Let me go through all three of them. The first one is this barrel right here, which is you can get, oops, I see a lot of glitching. That's something I need to save and refresh. So you notice that when I zoom this barrel up real big, something you'll notice about the 1.0 art is that it's kind of got these thick, black, kind of chalky lines when you kind of zoom in. And that's just kind of it, just the way that the 1.0 art is. It's kind of that cartoony kind of line work. But there's also the 2.0 art that's coming out. And the 2.0 art doesn't have that same kind of fancy or that kind of chalky line work. So this is what a kind of a 2.0 barrel would look like. And you'll notice it's not quite as chalky. We could use this as well, which would probably be the easiest and quickest choice. But if you do not have 2.0, you can also make your own barrel asset. And the trick is that we don't have to make a barrel asset that looks perfectly like a barrel, because it's going to be, most of the barrel is going to be hidden by the floor plan of the interior, right? So we just need to create the suggestion of a barrel, right? So why don't we just use this barrel right here as kind of a guide to kind of help us out. And I'll show you how to quickly make a barrel using the tool. This is a masterclass after all, right? So we'll change over the stroke line to be black. And I'll also make the barrel itself is going to be made of wood. I'm going to do my snap to grid. And I'm going to create this oval shape just like this. And what I want is I want it to be a fairly elongated oval. Okay, that's kind of important. Remember that. You want it to be fairly elongated. And the next step is, we'll make it a little bit bigger too. Let's also change the scale of it to where it's kind of bigger since it's higher up. And then I'll go over and just go to subtract, use my square, and then I can go in right here and just kind of remove these elements. Let's actually go up a little bit. Let's undo that. I think I deleted too much. Let's go with here, and then right about there looks good, I think. There we go, looks good. So there's kind of our barrel shape. Let's go ahead and just scale it up. That looks good. There you go. Okay, that part looks all right. Now we need to create the metal rings that bind the planks together to create the barrel, right? So we're going to have to do that as well. So we want to create this illusion of curvature. So we're going to do shadows, and we're going to use, I'm also going to use arches to kind of create that effect. So we'll take some arches here. I think this one, I'm trying to look at our arches here. This one might be one of the better ones for this. I'm not sure. Let's just go ahead and kind of place it down real quick. And I also might want to, let's try the thicker one actually. The thicker one might work better. Let's try this one. There we go. Kind of a fancy looking, one, isn't it? Okay, let's curve this one here like this. There we go. Looks good. That looks good. Let's go ahead and copy and paste these. I'm going to bring them down a layer. Let's bring the brightness down. There we go. And then I can kind of create the part underneath. You can see it. There we go. Okay. Oops. Oops. I went up a layer. There we go. Okay. All right. I might have to change these up a little bit. Let's transform them. Let's change the height a little bit. There we go. A little bit better. And then we'll go ahead and just bring the size down a little bit. There we go. Okay. The next step is we'll also We'll use a pipe for a center ring that should be straight. Let's go ahead and use wood. Actually, let's go across once like this. There we go. Let's change it up this way. Let's remove the caps. We don't need those. There we go. Let's go ahead and remove the snap to grid as well. We don't need that. There we go. Let's bring the size up. Saturation, brightness, contrast. There we go. This will work just fine for now. Let's also do the shadow work. So this is going to be kind of the tough one here, is that right now it all looks very flat. There's no curve to the wood or anything like that. Most of this is going to be hidden, don't forget. So what we'll do is we'll use the shape tool to create some shadows. So I'll turn the stroke off, go to fill black color like this, and go to blur. We'll change the blend mode to overlay. And then what I'll do from here is I'm just going to create some shadow, turn merge shape off. We don't need that. And I'm going to put some shadow on the edge here like this. So right now you just have pure black, and that's okay. What I'll end up doing is I'll change the opacity, bring that blur up, bring the opacity. Let's change the size a little bit. Oopsie, wrong one. This is the one I'm looking for up here. There we go. What about there? Copy, paste. It's a little too much. Let's go ahead and change the opacity down a little bit more. We'll copy and paste that shadow. Place it right here like that. There we go. Right on that side. And then we'll place a different shadow on the center part to act as the highlight on top. Remember, this is just a really simple, very simple design. We're not going to do anything complex. The more details and the more that you do to it, the more it'll look better. So just kind of remember that. But we're going to go with simple for now. I was going to create this little shadow highlight that goes across like that. There we go. Very simple stuff, nothing complex. And then also, why don't we put something on the ends of it, because it seems kind of flat. So what I can do from here is, let's maybe add in some kind of like pipe of some kind to create a metal cap on the top. Like this might work just fine right here, like this one. Why don't we try that? Let's go ahead and place it down on that one there, layer none. Let's desaturate it so it's just like the others. Bring the brightness up a little bit. Here we go. And then I'll copy and paste it, and then put another one here like this. There we go. Okay. And then I can go and delete that, and then just group this together, create group, and just call it barrel. A very makeshift barrel, but you get the idea. I can go ahead and put that barrel obviously on top. This is on the wrong layer. Let's put that up a layer. There we go. Much better. And then you have a barrel just right here that we can place right on top, just like that. And then, of course, when I go to make my interior, it will hide a lot of the inconsistencies and the problems that exist with it. So it's not too complex. Then I'll just go through. I'm going to go preview, and then I'll just go ahead and create the shape. It's going to be the inside of the structure. Let's see here. Merge is off. Let's go ahead and change this over to wood, and I'll just go plus. There we go. Okay. And then from here, I can go ahead and do some things like turning on the shadow to create the walls. So bring the intensity up. There we go. Let's also do our usual stuff, right? Walls should be brighter than the floor. The floor should be darker. The walls should be brighter. This will allow for contrast. We'll change the scale of this, and we'll also change the scale of the texture of the wood. There we go, like this. And because the barrel is, the wood grain is going in that direction, I'll just rotate this actually to where the grain is kind of facing the other way. So I can go over here and kind of get to my rotate. Oopsie, this one right here. Not that one. This one right here, like this. There we go. That way, not all the wood is going in the exact same direction. There we go. All right. So you have your barrel, and you have the shape that's on top. So normally what I would do for like a fantastical structure, like a barrel or whatever, is create the barrel shape itself so that you can see the exterior of the barrel, and then just place the interior of the shop or whatever it is right on top of that. So you can still see the exterior shape like it's a barrel. Your players can still see that it's a barrel. We'll also be able to see the interior as well. So that's generally my approach to that kind of thing. The other one that I was going to make was like a potion bottle, where it would just be a large potion bottle, like a circular one with like a square or circular base, and then it would have like uh, a, kind of a tube that came out of it, and then you would drink. Do one in a hand. Do one in a hand. I love that salt mill. That's great. Yeah, do you want to be here for another 3 or 4 hours? That's great. I love that. Ah, great suggestion. So yeah, that's basically how my approach to it. It's not my favorite barrel, but it's okay for the amount of time that we have right now. So, and then from there, I would just kind of create my group. That's kind of been my approach for that. Why don't we do something completely different from the last one? In this one, the last one, this next one, why don't we make like a hobbit house? This has been heavily requested. I could maybe even do a whole stream on this, but let's kind of go over the approach of how I would go about doing a hobbit house. And I think a hobbit house is a great kind of fantastical kind of structure. It's a house underneath of a hill, which I think is kind of a cool and interesting concept. So let's see what we can do to approach making that. Now for this one, I don't need to make any kind of mini model of any kind. What I need to do is just create the hill itself, and then from there I can start building out the structure. So I'll go ahead and delete these. Let's go ahead and turn the grid off. Let's also switch. Let's change the texture to something different. Why don't we just fill it with grass? Okay, and what we'll do is we'll show both exterior and interior on this hobbit house. The first thing I would do is build the hill itself, right? Once you have the hill, then you can start building the structure inside of it. So I would go into the catalog and choose hill, and there's a couple of them. There's this rocky hill, and then there's this more craggy hill. Let's go with the rocky one for now. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and use my circle shape, but I'm not going to make a perfect circle. Hills are not perfect circles, right? They're generally oblong. They have some interesting shapes to them. So don't make a perfect circle. Feel free to kind of just make it go kind of this oval-like shape, and then you can kind of flush it out from there. Let's go ahead and bring the stroke up. Let's flip it to where the hill is facing on the outside. The face of the hill is on the outside. There's our first step, right? We kind of have that put together. And then from there, we might want to consider having some kind of fill interior of some kind. What we can do is let's go ahead and use maybe this nice wooden texture here. Let's go with this one. This is nice and big. Let's also change the brightness a little bit. It's a little dark. There we go. Okay, now I can kind of see it better. And I'm going to go ahead and just use this fill for now. You know what? Actually, let's have the interior be a black color instead. There we go. Because the thing with the hill is that we're not going to line the entire hill with like brick and wooden walls. What we'll do is we'll have rooms that are within it, and that black is going to represent negative space. Negative space meaning your players won't be able to walk around in that black space, right? It represents negative space. I'll also, I'm going to go ahead and select that hill and then make sure that my fill options, the layer offset, is down quite a bit because I want to be able to create things inside of it without the black covering it up. So that first part. Once you've made the hill, then you need to create all the access points, right? So with access points, we'll want to go to Shape Tool, go over to Portals, and then we'll say that the entrance is right here, like this. We could probably make it a little bit thinner. There we go. So there's your entrance to go into the Hobbit house. The next step is we want to do a couple things. One, we want to have two types of walls that we're going to use for this. One, there's going to be walls made of stone. Those stone walls are going to be the foundation that's going to hold the top of the hill from collapsing into the house, right? And then we'll have another wall that's closer onto the inside made of wood. So it's going to be both stone and wood. And this is something I want to mention in advanced architecture in general, is usually the material from the inside of a structure and the outside of the structure vary. So let me give you a quick example, just what I'm talking about. So if I was to have a, let's go ahead and take some stone here. Let's pick a wall of some kind. Let's say that it's made of this stone right here, and I want to go across like this. And this doesn't necessarily apply to this map because there is no exterior walls to a hobbit house. The walls are all in the inside where you can't see them. But if you were making any kind of structure, and I don't always do this, by the way, I don't always do an interior and exterior wall, but I can say that it is a big part of both of advanced architecture and the fantasy architecture, is there would be two types, right? You would have the inside of the wall and the exterior part of the wall. So for instance, this part of the wall, the wooden part, would be the interior, where there's a nice wood finish that's maybe got a varnish on it that would be on the inside. And then you have the stone that would be on the outside or behind the wall that would act as the foundation to hold the structure up, right? One thing that I can say that's important in fantasy is that fantasy draws inspiration from reality. So you do want to have some level of realism in your map so that way it's not so fantastical that it doesn't really translate to the players that are on the map. Okay, so now that I've kind of picked those two materials there, I can start just putting the structure together. What I should do is lock this piece so I don't accidentally select it. And then I should start building the actual rooms and stuff. And so the way that I'll set this up is I'll go ahead and turn this grid on so I can kind of see it. That way I can kind of use it to my advantage if I want. And then from here, I'll choose, let's go with this wooden one here. We'll go snap to grid is on, and then we'll create the main entranceway. Right here, we'll go plus. So there'll be an entranceway there. And then in the entranceway, we want to maybe have like what's called like a vestibule of some kind. A vestibule is like the room that you have before you go. Let's go ahead and turn on merge shapes here. The vestibule is like the room that you go to before you go into other rooms. It's basically like a parlor or a little lounge area where you like take off your shoes. Like think of it as kind of like a laundry room or a bonus room of some kind that begins the entrance, right? So we'll start with this shape here. I'm gonna go ahead and push this down a layer. 2, I want this to be this. Let's also select this one real quick and make sure the walls are above. A mudroom. That's a great way. Thank you, Tanglewist. Antechamber, mudroom, entry room. Love it. I always use vestibule, but there is a lot of different ways of kind of describing it. So appreciate you mentioning that, by the way. Thank you very much. Let's go bring the offset up as well. The layer offset up. Here we go. I'm going to make sure that the walls are high up and that the hill overlaps the inside. So you have like this kind of vestibule or mud room, you want to call it, some entrance room of some kind, right? We could also, let's see here. Let's turn that snap to grid back on and we'll continue having it go into the heart of the whole structure. And in the center will be this circular foyer that will be the connector to all the other hallways that connect to the other rooms. So we'll use the circular or oval shape of the hill to our advantage so that way it kind of fits to it. So if I make a circular foyer in that center piece, that will allow for access to the other rooms, because it would be terrible if you had to go through all these different rooms to get to where you're trying to get to, right? So let's go ahead and turn snap to grid off, and we'll leave the preview on so that I can kind of see it. About that size looks good. Let me do it again real quick. Good. Let's add it right about here. Oops, I want to turn snap to grid off. There we go. This will be like the center foyer. I'm going to make sure there's enough room for around here. So we'll put the foyer here, right there, plus, there we go. There's our foyer, and then we'll create a series of rooms and hallways. So let's put one here and here. Like this, that looks good. Make sure there's enough room What about there? We'll go plus. Let's go ahead and rotate and then create a couple rooms that go this way as well, plus, and then another one that goes this way, plus. There we go, that looks good. And then we can go ahead and create the rooms themselves. Let's go ahead and connect this plus. Let's go ahead and connect and make this larger room right here. We can even connect rooms if we need to, if we want to. Let's go plus, connect that room. Let's also connect this room right here with each other. Why don't we make it a little bit smaller and kind of connect it like this, plus, there we go. So now you have that interesting shape. Let's also do something a bit different here. Let's create a larger room that connects to here like this. There we go. This can be like a drawing room or a living space. We'll plus to that. There we go. And then I'll go ahead and make another shape over here like this. Let's make it a little bit smaller, but a little bit this way. That looks good. Okay. We'll go plus, and then another room right here like this. And then I'll kind of connect to add a little bit more space to create another room that maybe connects to these two or kind of connects like this. So we'll go plus, there we go. So you have a little separate room there. Let me just take a look at it real quick. Why don't we add another space right here, like a little alcove. Let me just take a step back and look at the design. There we go. So now there should be access to every section, right? What you don't want is to go through all these different rooms. So let's go ahead and just go over the access so that we can make sure that it's correct. This right here is your vestibule or your mudroom, right? And so you would start here, and then from here you could make your way into the foyer, and then from here you have choices, right? You can go from the foyer into maybe the pantry or the kitchen, and you can loop your way out instead of having to backtrack. You can move into this space, or you can go into here, into this space, or make your way into this space here. So they're all connected. That's a big part about architecture, is making sure for your floor plans is to making sure that you have access to each room. It would be terrible if the kitchen was connected to the bedroom and you had to go through one of those rooms to get to the other. The foyer in the center, that circular foyer in the center, allows for that not to happen. So you can just go from one room to the other very seamlessly. So I usually always start at the entrance and then move my way inward. We took advantage of the circular shape or semicircular shape by creating a circular foyer in the center that goes well with the circular shape of the hill. And then that foyer again is the connector. And then you could do all kinds of interesting things to make this more interesting. I'll add in just a couple access elements to this and then we'll call it good. I don't want to go into interior decorating. Next month, what we'll do is we'll dedicate an entire stream series to interior decorating. I know this is one that some people kind of struggle with, like, how do I make the interior decorating more interesting? We'll go into that, okay? All right, let's go ahead and make sure that the the layer is up. So if I place a stair, that it will not go above the stairs or above the walls, but go below the walls, but not go below the floor itself. So I'll go into the catalog right here. I mentioned this in the last stream that I did, or in the advanced. And one thing I mentioned is that sometimes stairs don't have to make a whole lot of sense. Sometimes just having stairs just be in funky places and can make it a little bit more interesting. This is just something that I've kind of noticed. So let's go ahead and we're going to use the luminosity blend mode so it stays the same color. I'll bring the brightness down, and I don't want them to be huge steps. Remember, it's a Hobbit, so why don't we make them small steps? And what I'll do is that the foyer is going to be at a lower elevation than the others. And by that, I mean just maybe about 2 feet lower than the other rooms. So the center room, the foyer, goes down, and then all of these steps will create like a ring that's going to go around. So we'll go here, let's go transform. We'll change the width to make sure that it matches. And then I can just kind of create these stairs that's going to create this nice partial octagon shape with the stairs going into the foyer here. There you go. So now you have the stairs that kind of go into that. And that works kind of well there, right? Going into that foyer. And it also creates that sense of depth, right? So that's kind of the approach that I kind of go. And then from there, you would also do interior walls as well. Let's just do a couple of them just to get a feel for it. And then we can do one more structure, or this might be the last one. But I would do things like, yeah, underground homes. Yep, absolutely. Great. Oh, I like that. That's good information. I did not know that, DW Daniels. Daniels, that's great info. Awesome. Appreciate people telling me about that. I like that. Let's go create some interior walls. So that way we can kind of separate some rooms from each other a little bit. So we're going to have that wall there. We could create, let's say that we wanted to, let's leave this one open. We could also create a series of like doorways. Like maybe that's a room and we don't want there to be a door there. This might be a door there. You would kind of maybe expect a door right here if you wanted to keep people out. If you're having a hard time with your saving, I see first time chatter there. If something goes wrong with your save an offline backup. You can go right here. It's called save offline backup right here. Look for this, save offline backup. And then it'll allow you to back it up. And then when you leave the map and you go back to my maps page, there'll be a little button that says load offline backup. And then that way you'll be able to upload it. Okay. If you have any problems with uploading it using Chrome, there has been some issues with Chrome lately, and I recommend you switch over to using Opera. And I don't mean Opera GX, just the regular Opera. That might help you, but just kind of a heads up there. I hope that helps, RPG Rack. All right, so just kind of creating the internal walls and stuff is very, very helpful. So just to kind of separate different rooms, you can do that, right? Like maybe I want to separate this room from that one, like this, and I can add this separate room right here like this, or maybe I want to create like a pantry or something right here that's separate, or maybe I want to create a separate wall right here because maybe this is a closet space and to the right there, or maybe I want to add another wall pieces into here to create a separate room like this. So there's all these different things that you can kind of do. Like maybe I want to connect this to create some kind of wall piece that creates these separate rooms, and maybe that's just something that holds it up. Like this is just for some foundations, and then you can kind of create these portals like this. So there's a lot of different things that you can kind of do to kind of create your shapes, but I find it quite helpful. Yeah, I hope that works for you, RPG Rack. But I think you get the general concept, right? Take advantage of the oval shape when you're making your internal walls. They can be made of wood. They don't have to be made of stone. If there's a second floor, then you might want to consider, especially if there's a second floor resting above a certain section, it's okay to use stone for that internal wall, and that will indicate to the players that, hey, because there's these stone foundations or these stone walls on the first floor, there might indicate a second floor above, because it's stone is going to act as the foundation to kind of hold it up. Now, there was one last thing that I wanted to do on this one before we call it good, was I did want to add some stone walls to the outside, because right now it's just all made of wood, and being under a hill, you're going to see some like biodegradable, they're going to rot. And so what you want is the stone to be on the outside and the wood's going to be on the inside. So I can use this stone right here, and I'm just going to line this up. This part might be a little time consuming right here, because you can't just use the same shape, unfortunately, and then just scale it up, because what ends up happening is the more complex your shape is, it doesn't necessarily size up to be exactly the same. So what I end up doing here is I'm just going to use some stone wall here, and this will take a few moments to do it, but it's going to make more sense, because again, wood rots, right? It's kind of a bio material. And so by creating this stone foundation, or this stone on this side, you're kind of creating you're kind of insulating it as well as creating support. Yeah, some woods are, and I'm pretty sure that there was probably some medieval materials and chemicals that they were able to create to make it more resistant. So that's probably all true. I believe that, absolutely. I just didn't do a whole lot of research before this on that, but I totally believe that. There we go. And now we have kind of this stone-like texture that's on the outside, and this is going to act as like the foundation, right? And we're just going to hold on top of. But you're right, like maybe in this Hobbit, they have a special lacquer or some kind of material or pitch or something that they use. They soak all the wood in, and that will make it less resistant or make it more resistant to like rotting or something like that. But yeah, you don't have to do that, but that makes sense. I have tried to copy the shape, and what I've noticed is that it doesn't work. Why don't I copy the whole shape and I'll show it to you so you can see what I mean. Like this is a fairly complex shape. See how complex the shape is? So what you can do is we can like switch it over to like stone like this and see what happens when I scale it up. It doesn't really match up properly. You see the problem there? So that's kind of the big problem that I've kind of noticed when I kind of do that. It just doesn't seem to work very well. I mean, I guess you could scale it to be on the outside, but it doesn't work very well, I've noticed, especially on complex shapes. Yeah, shady maps, absolutely. If you bring the scale size up and then put it underneath, that can work. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, unfortunately, the more complex the shape is, you see how many complex shapes that I have built into this? The more complex the shapes are, the less likely you'll be able to just scale up the stamp. I mean, that would, or the shape. I would love that personally. That would be really cool, but unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. But it's understandable why you would think that that approach would work. All right, where are we at for time here? 3:51. Okay. Sweet. We just have a few more minutes before the stream is over. Let's just recap a little bit on just kind of covering the fantasy architecture thing. And the first part is if you have a hard time visualizing what you're making, make a mini model, right? We made that fantasy regional model of that brewery. And with that model there, it was so much easier for me to decide, how I was going to make the floor plan, the layout for the structure itself, because I had this semi-isometric structure to work off of. You can also make it like this side view architectural drawing as well. I've done that as well. Some of my Gothic stuff, I've made a kind of a side view structure. It kind of looks like an architectural technical drawing, but you can also use those. I find those are very, very helpful to also decide how many floors something is, where the windows will be. So some kind of model can really, really help you if you struggle with visualizing what the structure will look like in a floor plan. Making that little mini model will help to deal with that problem, okay? So just super important. The other thing is that when you're making it, when I think of fantasy, I think of things that are just not like something that you would see in reality, right? It kind of departs from reality, but know that it doesn't have to be a full departure. Remember that the way that you kind of telegraph it, the way that you put it down on the map can confuse your players. So making sure that the fantastical element is explained with some kind of fantastical explanation will also be kind of helpful for that. The first one, we made that barrel. Remember, you don't have to use a regular fantasy Tudor style type of structure from the stamp catalog. You could use a giant barrel for the brewery. You could use a giant potion bottle for a potion shop, or maybe you wanted an armor shop. Maybe it was a giant helmet that's inside of there, or maybe it's a witch's hut. Maybe there's a giant witch's hat on top of the hut, right? So fantasy elements like that, something you wouldn't see in real life, maybe in like a theme park or something, but adding those kind of elements, I think, can really make your structures more interesting. And then finally, we landed on making that hobbit house and just kind of taking advantage of the overall shape of the hill and then using that to figure out how to set up the layout for the floor plan. All right. Well, I think that is it. I hope that was useful. If anyone has any questions in the chat, feel free to shoot me those questions right now. Let me just check the time here. Yeah, we have a few minutes. Shoot me some questions if you have any. If you don't, that's okay. I totally understand. I'll just go ahead and save this. for now. Oh yeah, if anyone is having issues, just kind of heads up, if anyone's having issues right now with Chrome had a recent update and it kind of created this WebGL error that's been going on. So if you're having a hard time loading your maps at all, like if they're just not loading and you kind of see this checkered pattern, I totally recommend that you switch over to Opera. And I don't mean Opera GX, which is like the gaming one. I recommend um, using the regular Opera instead of GX. Do I have a quick advice for outside maps? You know what? We have a ton of videos on that, and I would go over that, but that would take about a solid 20 minutes probably to explain exteriors. But I can give you a quick little layout on how I go about doing it. You always just build from the ground up, right? You would start with building the landscape. And what I normally do is I use contrasts. So if you are going to build land, have it contrast with land versus water, right? Maybe it's a river scene, a coastal scene, a lake, right? Or a stream. So there's some contrast there. Or maybe the contrast is height. You have a tall section and a short section, right? You would have like maybe the tall part of a cliff or a hill, while you would have this lower section, lower elevation on the part of the map, right? So the way to make a convincing exterior map is to always have some kind of contrast. Again, water versus land, or maybe it's rocky terrain versus a flat terrain, or maybe it's a tall hill versus a flat type of plain, right? So contrasts are a great way to make your map kind of pop out right away. Normally, I would just usually add a water source of some kind. It could be as simple as just a little creek off to the side, or maybe it's just a flooded puddle that's somewhere along the farmstead that you're working on, or maybe it's a coastal scene, right? So by using contrasts, you can really make the map pop out more. So that would be my suggestion for exteriors. Use those contrasts to make it pop out more and make it more interesting for your players. All right. Well, I think, Edge is also spamming down multiple stamps for some reason. Okay, yeah, use Opera. If the Opera doesn't work, definitely send a support ticket to inkarnate@support.com, and I'll definitely help you there. I do support as well, so I'll be there and I'll try to help you the best that I can. But for right now, the best workaround we have from this WebGL error from Chrome is going to be using Opera. Again, don't use GX. That's the gaming one. Use regular Opera. All right, well, I don't see any other questions in there unless I missed something. Ooh, when you expand a shape, is there a hotkey for perfect shape or centering? Yes, there is. I'm glad that you said that, by the way. Who asked that question? McAnders. Hey, yeah, great question. Yes, absolutely. So what you can do is that when you click, and without pressing any hotkeys, what happens is where you click and hold is where the starting drag point is going to be. If you select Start or Alt, depends on what keyboard you're using, what will happen is that this will create the perfect dimensions of the shape, right? The start point is still wherever you clicked and dragged, but now it will make a perfect square. If you select the control key, the control key will change the drag center point, or the drag point to the center. That will center it. If you hold both control and the start or the alt or option key, it will make a perfect square and put it in the center. Okay, so just some important things with the hotkeys. So with control, it will center it. With start, alt, or option, depending on your keyboard, it will make it a perfect. There you go. Pretty easy stuff, right? Not too complex. Good question, by the way. Yeah, the control alt is very, very handy for making perfect circles or a perfect square. You can also use snap to grid. I recommend using shortcut keys. That's how I'm able to make maps very, very quickly, is using shortcut keys. I use them all the time. If you don't know where the shortcut keys are, you'll see down here at the bottom, it says shortcuts. And here are all the shortcut keys that you can find right here. This will all be very, very helpful. So go look at these and memorize them, because shortcut keys are a great way to make maps quicker. And if you're not interested in speed because you like to take your time, that's okay too. Don't feel dumb, McAnders, at all. Don't feel dumb at all. There's so much going on with the tool. Look at all these buttons and all these things going on. There's so much going on. It's easy to miss stuff. So if you miss that little shortcut thing, don't worry about it. You're not stupid or dumb. Don't say that. Be nice to yourself. All right. Well, I think that's it for questions. I'm just going to take a look here. Is there any other questions that I missed? I don't think so. Nope, I think that's it. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I'm looking forward to, I think we're going to do a 20-minute village on Friday using the watercolor city style. So, and we're going to use all of the techniques that I talked about on how to make exteriors using those contrast techniques. All right. I will see you all on Friday. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you soon. Bye, everybody. Take care.